Let's be real for a sec, shall we? Landmines come rather you prepare 18 months from getting out of the military or even when you find yourself killing it in the first few years after your military service. The question, though, is how do you overcome losing six figures and being bedridden for a couple years to rebuilding your dream post-military? Today's guest will share his raw, authentic story in doing just that and how to refine your thinking to think through your pain, to rebuild your authority in your new desired battlefield. Don't go nowhere, Ambitious Vet.
So I spent about 2 years on my deathbed. I pretty much didn't leave the house unless it was to the hospital or to a doctor's appointment. We burned through all of our savings again. So now this is the second time that I've lost everything. Burned through all of our savings, racked up a bunch of debt just trying to stay alive. And then as we get to the end of my financial reserves and we get to the end of my credit limits, I figured, well, I have to do something. I don't really have a choice.
No matter where you are in life, the mission isn't over. There's an enemy that can stop you and your efforts dead in their tracks. And guess what that enemy is, Ambitious Vet? The enemy is you. How do I know this? Well, I've been there, done that. Getting out of the United States Marine Corps in 2012 to 5 different careers in 5 different industries, selling anything from vacuums, telecommunications, door to door, to finally figuring it out in 2017 and becoming a sales trainer for 2 marketing software companies, making over 6 figures in my life. Now, I don't say that to be like, oh, well, good for you. Ambitious Vet, I spent over $80,000 on my own personal and professional development to learn how to become successful in my life. So I went back, repurposed the tracks that what took me off of wrestling mat, a school desk to my name, an apartment I couldn't afford in San Diego, California, one of the most highest cost of living places in the world, to what had me not only learn how to make 6 figures in my life, but also how to find my purpose, how to be a commander in my life and be in control of my own ship. If that sounds like you, I want to offer you an opportunity to go and check out a website, Ambitious Vet, that's going to really introduce you to my personal story if you haven't already learned about it, and maybe you may identify with it as well. Also, at the end of that, you're going to learn about an opportunity to be able to gain a digital copy of my best-selling book, 10 Steps to Predicted Success Out of the Uniform, plus the Ambitious Veteran Field Manual, the 5x5 goal-setting framework, and the sniper-focused keynote, and lifetime membership to the Ambitious Veteran Network Facebook group, where you can plug and connect with other brothers and sisters like yourself in the trenches of life looking to become more. Now, this is valued at over $1,000 in value. I think the person that was helping me package this up valued it as over $1,300. But I told him, hey, let's offer this at $4.99 and see who wants to get into this deal. Ambitious Vet, if that's not enough for you, I'm also offering a Patriot's Promise. This isn't like in the military where you were locked into a contract for years and weren't able to get out of it. If you go and you download the ebook and you gain all the bonuses and you don't like them, you're like, Chris, this is shitty, right? Really, right? Email me and I'll give it all back to you. No questions asked. I just am here to serve you. Does that sound like a fair deal? If so, what's behind that website is a mission where the steps are already lined out and all you have to do is execute. That's what's waiting for you on the other side, Ambitious Vet. If you're like, hey, Chris, I need you to shut the hell up, I want to check out the website, go to www.10stepstosuccessbook.com. That's spelled TEN, stepstosuccessbook.com. And Ambitious Vet, I will see you on the other side of that.
It's time to get into the trenches, dig into your purpose, and fire up your life fulfillment. The Ambitious Vet Podcast starts now.
What's going on, Ambitious Vet? We are right back inside this ridge today with Jeremy Knopf. Jeremy ran a successful marketing agency until a health crisis nearly killed him and destroyed his business. He rebuilt from that devastating loss by developing a process that his agency now uses to help clients get featured in the media so they can become the authority in their industry, attract more customers, and earn more money. Jeremy's also a speaker, author, and a Marine Corps veteran. Jeremy, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Man, it's an absolute pleasure. I mean, you've done some amazing work, brother, of like getting out, building a successful business to hitting, ground zero to really figuring out how to rebuild from like probably God only knows, man. So for that, man, just thanks. It's a complete honor for you to be on the show, really.
Thank you, man. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, man. And you're a freaking Marine, man. I literally almost had a yut come out of me. I was like, but it's been 10 years. So sometimes it's hard to kind of sneeze up every now and again. But brother, go ahead and fill the gaps inside of that introduction and let an ambitious vet know who you are.
Yeah. So, like you said, I ran a marketing agency. Well, actually, let's back up a little bit before that, because there's some really interesting nuggets of wisdom, I think, in what led up to that successful marketing agency that I was running before the health crisis. All right. So we'll give you the super condensed version, and feel free to dig into any other stuff you want me to expand on. But got out of the Marine Corps, started my first business pretty quickly right after getting out, and I fucked everything up. I crashed my business, burned through all of my savings, destroyed my credit, and made pretty much every mistake I could possibly make, right? I lost 6 figures pretty much right out of the Marine Corps.
Holy cow.
And yeah, at I think 22 years old, I think I was. That's a heavy loss. So
huge loss. Yeah.
Yeah. So I spent the next few years rebuilding myself. My confidence was shot, and I really was uncertain where I wanted to go from there. Shortly after that, I ended up applying for some jobs in the graphic design and marketing field, and stumbled across this one that seemed like it was perfect. It was from a guy who's very experienced. He had run agencies all over the country for decades, and was kind of on his sunset of his career. He was winding down, just running a nice little quiet agency in a small town, Spring Hill, Florida, for anyone who may be familiar with the area. It's a tiny, tiny little town. And initially I'd highlighted the job, but initially I was just not going to go apply for it because they were looking for a particular amount of experience. I think they were looking for like 5 to 10 years experience and at least a BA in some marketing or design related field.
Right.
I had none of that. Right. I was all completely self-taught. I was teaching myself. I mean, I've always been very artistic. I taught myself to draw. I did all these, artsy kind of things when I was young. Never went to school for it, but I invested in myself and really took the time to learn beyond just, hey, let's draw something that I like. Let's actually learn the principles. Let's understand how this works from a fundamental perspective. How does art and design affect people psychologically? How do we sway people's opinions and thoughts with the proper application of the design fundamentals, things like this. And so he and I called him and I was like, look, you've got this job. I'm interested in applying. He says, well, we've been interviewing for a couple of weeks. I've pretty much got it narrowed down to one of 2 candidates. They both have tons of experience. They both have a degree. In fact, one of them has an MFA, a Master's in Fine Arts degree. He's like, so, I mean, if you want to come down, I'm happy to sit down and talk with you, but we're probably going to hire one of those 2. I was like, well, I'll come down and do it. Sure. It was right around the corner. What's the harm?
That's awesome.
It was, and it had sat on my desk, and this is actually, I think this is something that I think I took for granted for a long time, but that paper this is how old I am, right? There was classified ads. I don't even think they do that anymore for job listings.
Oh, really?
This
I
was
don't
back.
think so.
No,
I don't think so. Yeah.
this was back in 1999. So I was actually just getting ready to throw it away, and the girl I was dating at the time actually talked me into calling him, which I did, and then that was where that conversation came in. So I drive down there, walk into the place, and he's this old silver-haired guy, just really laid back. You could tell kind of the way he carried himself that he knew a lot and just didn't have anything to prove. And so we walked in, we interviewed,
So
we talked a little bit, kind of getting down to some of the typical questions that they ask to kind of get a feel for your character, for what kind of a person you are. Little bit of questions about knowledge from an industry perspective. And then we went and looked at my portfolio, which none of it was actually done for any clients. None of it was done in any real commercial environment. It was just things that I had designed on my own because I wanted to teach myself and I wanted to create a portfolio for when I got out, I could then use that to get a job in this field. Well, he's looking at it and he's asking me all of these questions that just seem kind of odd, like he's asking me really detailed questions about little tiny details in some of the designs. And after a few minutes of this goes on where he's looking at these designs that I had created that were purely hypothetical, there was no real client in mind. He says, I'm going to tell you something. He says, you're pointing out things that most people with an MFA wouldn't even understand. And the fact that you took the time to learn to that level on your own tells me a lot about you. So here I was with no college degree, no industry experience. And to top it off, technically, I didn't even have a high school diploma. I had actually dropped out of high school and joined the Marine Corps. And I just figured, well, fuck it. I'm going to stay in the Marine Corps for 20 years, right? We all think that going in.
Of course, yeah.
Sure as hell doesn't end up that way for most of us.
No.
Oh,
man.
But at the time, my commanding officer was like, look, you're going to get your GED and just get this done. I don't care if you want to do it. And today that guy is actually getting promoted to general here coming up in July. So
Holy cow.
he stuck around. He's an amazing leader, and I'm glad that he forced me to do that. It didn't really have any impact on my career, but it was one of those things that should have been done. So I have literally none of the on paper qualifications that they were looking for, but because I took the initiative, I went in there, and it wasn't just the initiative of making the phone call. It was all of the initiative of the learning and the practice and the skills that I developed to get to the point of when I made the call and then we had the conversation, I could prove that I was qualified. And that's something that I think a lot of us don't do, especially in the civilian world once we get out, right? Like we're used to taking initiative in the Marine Corps. If somebody starts shooting at you, you don't wait for someone to say, go ahead and return fire. You just go and you do it.
You engage, yeah.
Right. But out here on the civilian world, I see a lot of veterans make the mistake of, because they don't want to be seen as too aggressive or too assertive or that guy, right? It's
so true.
That's how veterans are. They're just, that guy. We kind of bring ourselves down a little bit. I think we're doing ourselves a big disservice in that. So it was the initiative and everything that led up to that and following through on it. So I ended up working there for several years, I think 2 or 3 years, and I just loved it because this guy was just a complete wealth of knowledge, and he was an amazing person from top to bottom. And he, would always take time to teach people beyond just the job. So that turned out to be a huge opportunity, which then segued into my next venture eventually, right? So I left that in between starting my business and leaving the ad agency. I had actually worked at a few other places. I went to, I think I went to work for a mortgage place for a while. I worked at the newspaper and a software company where I was selling advertising for the newspaper. I was selling mortgages and I was selling software for the software company.
Nice.
And I did that because the reason that my first business failed was because I sucked at selling. I was uncomfortable. I didn't have the confidence. Everything in that area was a mess. And that was why my first business failed, right? Like in the beginning, I used to tell myself that it was because I started a web design agency in a tiny little town in 1999. So I was way ahead of the curve. And the reality is that was a bullshit excuse. That was the excuse that I gave myself to feel better about the failure. The reality is, if I had put forth the energy to sell, I could have called clients in New York. I could have called clients in Miami, LA, wherever, where people understood, even as far back as then, they understood that the web was going to be the future. Instead, I just talked to a few people around Spring Hill, tried to sell some local businesses, and none of it went anywhere. So eventually I realized that, and that was when I kind of bounced through a couple of sales jobs to get my skills up there, right? And this is something that in the military, we always have education we have to go through, right? Whether it's team leaders, squad leaders, platoon level stuff, we're always being
stuff
educated.
like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're always being educated. I think a lot of people, once they get out, they don't have that structure, so they don't put that in place anymore. They aren't going to continually improve themselves because they're not in that environment where it's expected and there's a framework for making it happen. So I went out, I got the sales skills, and God, I got to tell you, particularly the software company, Jesus, this place was run and owned by the Church of Scientology. Are you familiar with them?
Oh, pretty close. I mean, I've never been a part of Scientology or anything, but I've volunteered for a transformative company that people have perceived as that. So
Okay.
Slight taste, but never been like an official member, drink the juice type member.
Okay. So they were within the company. It wasn't a secret, but they weren't like super overt about it. But the people who run that organization are scary smart. Like, they really understand how the human mind works.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And their sales process as a result of this was scary effective. So I could walk up to a sales rep, listen to what they're saying. If I was to pick up, so the way they had it set up, it was like a boiler room type setup in here where everybody's just on these giant phone banks. And I could walk up, hear a rep talking, and I could pick up the manager phone, which then you could listen in on the call, and I could almost verbatim tell you what that prospect on the other end of the phone was going to say based on what this person had said, because they structure every part of the conversation so that there's only so many things somebody can say, and it doesn't matter what the situation is, they are always in control of that conversation. The level of proficiency they had developed within this company for sales was insane. So that was a huge benefit for me, because it gave me a very strong foundation for sales. And because it was such a high volume, high pressure environment, right? Like, they called people veterans, not in the military sense, but in the sense of somebody sticking around with the company for a long time. They called them veterans if they had stuck around for more than 3 months.
Wow.
So
that's the average for inside sales teams though, right?
Is it really?
Yeah. I was a sales trainer. I was a sales trainer for a software company out of San Diego for 2 software companies. That was our biggest hurdle, man, is keeping talent for the first 90 days. Because you strike out a lot. You're doing 150 calls a day. And if you could get 3 to 4 hours talk time on average every single day, that's pretty good. But man, I love your point. I love your point on like learning how to sell over the phone, because that's not always easy. You've got to like pick up on like tone, because you can't read body language either. So
right. Well, and you have to actually go overboard on it. And I can tell like in the way that you're talking that you have that background now that you pointed out, because you've got fluctuation in your tonality, in your intonation, all of the aspects of your voice. Like, you're doing all of the things that they talk about in that kind of a scenario. But that's just it. It's like people, especially once we get out, we tend not to go into situations where we're uncomfortable. So we have to do that. We have to go into situations where we become uncomfortable, because that's where all of the growth happens. And for me, that was one of the huge turning points as well, right? So the ad agency was a huge one. this one was another huge one because it put me back in the right place. It helped me develop the skills. It helped me rebuild my confidence. And then after that, I went to a couple of other sales jobs and then eventually restarted my next company, which was called Wildfire Marketing Group. And I ran that for, I don't remember exactly how long it was, 10, 15 years, something. I forget exactly what it was, but I ran that for, I ran it for several years. I did really well. And then I had taken about a year off. And as I'm getting ready to restart what was later going to become Spartan Media, that was when that health crisis kicked in. So I had this weird reaction to, I had discontinued a medication abruptly, and you weren't supposed to do that. And there were some other factors involved here that made the problem worse, which then triggered what appears to be an autoimmune condition. And from there, everything in my body went haywire. My own body was trying to kill me. I had pretty much every system in my body was misfiring. It was not performing the way it was supposed to. I was faced with pain from head to toe, skin down to bone, 24/7. And it was a level of pain. It absolutely was. And it was a level of pain that morphine didn't even touch, right? So there was a time when all of this was going on that I went into the hospital for a kidney stone. They gave me 2 doses of morphine, which pretty much killed the pain from the kidney stone almost entirely. But it didn't even take the edge off this other shit. Wow. So I spent about 2 years on my deathbed. I pretty much didn't leave the house unless it was to the hospital or to a doctor's appointment. We burned through all of our savings again. So now this is the second time that I've lost everything. Burned through all of our savings, racked up a bunch of debt just trying to stay alive. And then as we get to the end of my financial reserves and we get to the end of my credit limits, I figured, well, I have to do something. I don't really have a choice. So I, started trying to go full bore with the business again. And I now had to rebuild a business from zero while still going through this health shit. And I now have a marketing company with no track record. I have no case studies, no clients. I'm starting over from less than zero because in the marketing world, if you don't have current examples, if you can't show clients, if you can't show case studies of how you help people, you're really no different than some random person on Fiverr.
Right.
So
true. Yeah. It really, yeah.
Yeah. So that was,
I would just stop there as well too, because, were you feeling better at this point? Like,
No,
had you seen the end of the tunnel of this pain, excruciating internal pain while you were getting going?
No, I have not seen the end of that. I still am dealing with that today. We have been working on this for going on 7 years now. And if you had asked me 7 years ago, how long I could handle this level of pain, I would have told you 20 seconds, 30 seconds,
Wow.
It's an insane level. Like I would actually, in the early phases of this, I would curl up in a ball on the couch or in my bed and just pray to die. I wanted it to end. At first, I was scared that I was going to die. As it drug on, I then became scared that I wasn't going to die. And that was actually even more terrifying. I could not imagine living with that level of pain for the next 20, 30, 40, whatever, how many years I have left on this earth. So I actually got to the point where I understood how people chose to take their lives. Up to that point, I'd always thought, well, it's, that's because they're weak. That's it's a pussy move. It's not how, there's no excuse for it. But when you're in a level of pain that, like, imagine the worst pain you've ever felt and multiply it by like 1,000 and then deal with that for months and months and months on end. You can get to a point where you can understand how people do that pretty damn quickly.
I bet.
And,
wow.
Being a Marine, it probably wouldn't surprise you to know that there's firearms all over my house. So as I'm walking around the house, I would, see, oh, there's a gun up there on that, bookshelf, or there's a gun over here, behind this thing, or all these places. And while I did not want to take my life, the thought certainly crossed my mind of, hey, that would be a nice, easy way out of this. And right around that time was when one of the toughest Marines I ever served with took his life. So I looked at that as a sign, right? If he could do it, anybody can do it. And I know this because I'm sitting here thinking that, not that I want to do that, but it's an option. So that was when I started, aside from the fact that first of all, that kind of turned around my perspective and it gave me kind of a reason to keep pushing, but it also was what drove me to start reaching out to veterans, right? I'm sure you're aware that there's a epidemic of suicide within the veterans community.
It's continuing to go up. Yeah.
Yeah. The last I heard, the stat was 22 a day. And I don't know that I've seen that number really update in the last several years, but we're losing an insane amount of people. And the problem is it's multifaceted, right? It's the military, frankly, treats us as disposable. We, especially those of us who were in combat arms, if you were going to BAS, your leg better be chopped off and sitting in your lap. Like there had to be a life and death situation. It was not, you're not feeling well, go get checked out and see what they can do. It was, get out of BAS unless you're fucking dead.
Right.
So, we've got that mindset. And then of course, as veterans, we did something that less than 1% of the country does. I think that's the status, right around 1% somewhere.
It's around 1 or 2. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So we volunteer our lives to go and protect our nation, right? So we are the people who are used to being the protectors, used to taking care of other people, used to serving other people. So we have this flawed mindset that, I don't need anybody to take care of me. I've got this. I'll just do this. And we're afraid to reach out. We're afraid to ask for help. We're afraid that it's going to show weakness. And frankly, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
So
it is.
As I was going,
it really is.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I was going through all of this stuff, what I started doing was being very vocal about not only what I was going through, but how I was feeling about it all. And I started, talking about the importance of reaching out to people, to getting support when you feel like you're breaking, to getting therapy regularly, like regardless of whether you're in a good position or a bad position, I feel like we all should get therapy. I mean, when you think about it, look at somebody like Michael Jordan, right? He was arguably the best basketball player ever. Yet he had several coaches for pretty much every different aspect, right? He had a strength coach, he had a speed coach, he had a shooting coach, he had all these different coaches. So if somebody as proficient as Michael Jordan needs coaches for all these things, why the hell would we think that we don't need that?
Right.
So if you really value yourself and you want to continue doing whatever it is that your mission is, then why would you not get the help you need to continue to be able to perform at the top level?
So like for me, that's tough though, right? Because when I got out of the Marine Corps, and I'm sure there's an ambitious vet listening to this right now, that's just like, yeah, we don't know how to quantify our value. We don't know what our value really is, because when we were in the uniform, brother, it was, hey, be here at 04, PT gear, skivvy gear, make your shorts as short as you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Got those Daisy Dukes.
Get ready to run. So I would love to unpackage that too. Before we move into, launching Spartan Media. But I mean, how do you grow your value and your deservability? Let's face it, man. We get out and we're just like, hey, like, I don't know what my value is. The marketplace will tell me. So walk me through that process of how you started learning how to build your value and own your value.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Chris. And it's really a complicated one as well. So a good friend of mine shared a thought during a consulting session that we were doing together a while back, that you're only going to make as much as you feel that you're worth, right? The problem is we've all got this fucked up mindset of what we're actually worth, right? Whether we had good parents, bad parents, parents did the best they could, whatever the case is, we all have flawed thinking in what we're worth and what we deserve.
Right.
I see both extremes, right? I see people who are just brilliant and they do amazing things and they just don't see their own value. And then I also see these entitled twats who think that they should make 6 figures a year for sitting around writing blog posts, bitching about how terrible the world is and how they're going to fix it with no real experience in the world. So, you know, there's a bit of a balancing act, right? But I think part of it, we generally, when we're younger, we think we have a certain amount of value very loosely, but deep down, we don't believe it, right? So we'll go out and we'll talk about all the big things we want to do, but then not actually go after them, which then helps to kind of quantify in our mind. So we're not chasing outside of what we think we can actually achieve, which then creates this dichotomy in our brain where we had this thought that wasn't really based on anything, that we're worth X, but then deep down, we know we're really not. So we're chasing smaller goals. And then if you can't figure out how to get out of that cycle, then you're going to end up being one of these very negative people who just feels that the world owes you and that the world can't see your value and they're just ripping you off, right? Like I had an employee like that a while back who I had to fire. He came in talking about, you know, how brilliant he was, how he knew all these things about search engine optimization, and he was going to be my right hand and
saying all the right things.
Yeah. And so I was like, all right, well, look, I will give you a try and we'll see how it goes. So I hired him, and Chris, I got to tell you, the kid messed everything up. I would assign him a task. He would not do it, and he would go and like figure out his own thing that he decided he should be doing, or he would do something wrong and then not tell me. And there was a whole bunch of things that were going wrong. And I sat him down and said, look, here's the problems we have. Like, you're being given specific instructions. You're being told to do this. This is the level that I expect you to perform at. You're not doing this. We need to get this fixed. We need to get this in line. And then he comes to me one day after completely screwing something up. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he had completely screwed something up. And then we had a conversation about that first thing in the morning. Later on, right around noon, he comes and knocks on my door. I said, hey, boss, you got a minute? He's like, you want to go grab some lunch? I was like, I don't have time. I'm elbow deep in this project. He's like, oh, I was kind of hoping to talk to you. I was like, well, have a seat on the couch and you can talk while I'm working. Would you like to take a guess what he wanted to talk to me about?
A raise.
He wanted a raise.
Yeah.
So, and I say kid, he's not actually a kid. He was approaching 40. I think he was 39 at the time. So I was like, look, you are doing all of these things wrong. You said that you had a certain level of expertise. You're not performing at that level. I've had to go back and redo or have someone else do the work that you've done. Things are not right. And you're in here asking for a raise. Do you see the problem with this? And he's like, well, everybody's always shortchanging me. And I just, I think you should give me a raise and then I'll show you that I can do what I need to do. And, that's a terrible mindset. But the other side of the problem, which is actually more common, is people who don't go after what they actually deserve. And it's because we have this false mindset that we don't actually deserve it. And I don't know where that comes from. It's different for all of us. Everyone deals with it. I deal with it. You deal with it. We all do.
Oh, yeah.
The thing is, we have to figure out what we actually are amazing at. And this is part of the problem, is people just do whatever they happen to fall into often, rather than taking the thing that they're amazing at and passionate about and just driving full steam ahead with it. When you take the thing that you're passionate about and you're amazing at, and you put all of your energy and focus into it, you're going to crush it. And people will see the results. But then that's where the other part of the problem comes in. And that is that we have a false expectation as to how quickly we should see that result. So people are like, well, I've been working my butt off for, 6 months, a year. 6 months or a year is not anything in the grand scheme. You look at people I know everybody's familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk. People either love him or hate him, right?
Right.
But, you know, we all see the big things he's doing. He's on stage, or he's, you know, posting on social media, or he's going and doing these deals with all these people. What they don't see is the years leading up to that where he sucked.
Yeah.
His videos, his original videos from
With
Wine
the wine?
Library.
Yeah.
Yes. They are still there. It looks like a goddamn hostage proof of life video.
Oh my gosh. He's
They're
pale
terrible.
and just horrible
Yeah.
lighting. And
It's like in this basement, it looks like.
Right.
Do you struggle with your payroll processing or other HR compliance needs in your small business? If so, check out Get Payroll, a Vietnam veteran-owned company who has been in the industry for over 30 plus years and is now disrupting the fintech industry with their payroll app, integrating payroll, timekeeping, and HR all in one place for an affordable price for your business to scale and grow, Ambitious Vet. If you're ready to learn more, click our affiliate link in the show notes below and make sure you let that team know that the Ambitious Vet sent you. Now, back to the show.
Like he was in his basement, his
Yeah.
light. It looked like he was in prison, man. I totally got that. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it looked a lot like one of those snuff films, but that's what that's what people don't understand is there's all this stuff behind the scenes, the late night, the work, the learning, the rejection, the fear, uncertainty, doing things that are so far outside of your comfort zone, yet continuing to do them until you get the results. And when we can take and align our passion and then put that consistency into that, those two things combined are how we get to the point where we start to see our value. Now, another side of that.
I've never heard it put that way. So let's slow down because that's a huge golden grenade right there that an ambitious vet that's listening to this right now needs to actually comprehend. Passion needs to meet consistency to get the desired end result. And I've never heard it put that way, man. I've heard it, I've read, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, which is still one of my favorite books. Consistency, compound interest, stuff like that. But just inserting your passion into consistency equals your desired end result, Ambitious Vet. I hope that you got that down, and feel free to share that on social media as well. Jeremy, back to you, brother.
Yeah. So, that's where we get there. The other side of it is getting an outside perspective. So I talked about the importance of getting therapy, but it's also, and the therapist can help with that as well, right? Because they understand how to dig into your subconscious or your psyche and kind of pull the pieces out and figure out where you have this twisted mindset, right? Like I know I grew up in what I would call a poor household. We didn't have a lot of money. Parents worked their asses off. My father was a firefighter. And then for anyone that's familiar with that world, you know that they aren't paid shit. So they all have a second or third job. So, he would work his butt off at the fire station, risking his life. And then he would come home and then go out to the construction site the next day. I spent a great many weekends on construction sites, which as a kid, I kind of hated it a little bit. But as an adult, I look back on that and I actually enjoyed it because, I got to spend time with him, and I didn't really think of it that way back then. But I got to spend time with him, and I also got to learn a lot of really cool skills, which, in the long run helped to improve my problem solving abilities.
Wow.
But
no, that's good, brother. I love that. It sounds like that's where you got your work ethic as well. You know what I mean? Because firefighters, they go on like 3 days, 3 off, or some kind. I know different regions are different with that cadence, but being able to wake up, do construction and stuff like that's totally different. But back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, in their case, it was, I think 24 on, 48 off, but yeah, same idea. It was, constantly working, constantly doing what he had to do to take care of the family. So, I respect the hell out of that. But, we get that therapist and they can help figure out where our mind is kind of misaligned. But then also we need to have some really solid people that we trust in our lives as mentors, right? Because they're going to see things that we don't. I can sit there and bash my head against a problem, but because I'm sitting here right next to it, I'm maybe not going to see the solution, but my friend who knows me and understands how I operate, and they're a pretty smart person too, they can say, well, maybe you're not looking at it the same way I am. Here's what I see. And then it's like, holy shit, that's the solution. Having mentors, having some trusted advisors. Kevin Harrington wrote a great book about mentorship that I think I would recommend to anybody. But he talks about, he's had a lot of mentors in his career, and that's had tremendous impact on him, but then also turn around and be a mentor to other people. So the cool thing about that is that's going to help you to see your self-worth, because you're out here giving, right? There's no expectation of getting anything back out of it. You're just helping someone else. I look at it, thank you. Yeah. The way I look at it is the only time you should be looking down on someone is if you're reaching down to give them a hand up. Yeah. And I have found that mentorship in both directions. I've had some great mentors in my life. Kevin Harrington's one of them. He's given me some great advice. I've got a few others. I think that is valuable, but it's also valuable to be a mentor, because then it helps to refine your thinking. And this is one of the reasons that I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of content, is because by sharing that knowledge, you're then refining it in your head, because in order to teach something, you have to know it even better than just to be able to execute it. Yeah. So when I'm trying to teach something, my knowledge might be up here. If I'm going to teach it to someone whose knowledge is way down here, I have to bring it down. I have to simplify it. I have to explain it in a way. Yeah, exactly. Man. Yep. That's so good. What I was going to say to that is, like, because we want to slow this down, because you're being a golden grenade launcher right now, and you're not even meaning to, man. But, ambitious vet, whatever that challenge, whatever that skill gap is inside of your life. If you're a mid-level manager inside of a Fortune 5000 company right now, and you're seeing the gap in your human capital to actually accelerate your path to an executive role, right? Go in and look at those skill gaps, figure out the problem that you need to solve, and go out and start learning, immerse yourself in that skill and refine your thinking, master it, right? And then refine your thinking so you can go back and teach it back, because that shows the proof in the pudding if you are who you say you are, man. I don't know about you, Jeremy, man, but I hate the people that talk a lot. They talk a lot about things, but it's not precise. And they're not like being able to communicate it in a way that has me get it. Right. They got it in their head, but they don't know how to have me get it. And, that was one thing when I was a sales trainer. I was like, man, like how do you do that? How do you not get it? How do you get the person in front of you to get it? You know what I mean? So that was always a huge challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's so good, brother. But tell us about Spartan Media, man. I mean, you've raised from the deathbed, man. You have that loads of debt. Any ambitious vet listening to this is going to be like, holy cow, how did he overcome that? And how did he rebuild this brand new brand? So walk us through Spartan Media and what your vision and mission is with this.
Yeah. So it comes back to some of the things that we talked about. So one of the first things you have to do is you have to have a mission. So obviously, I mean, we all want to make money. We all want to be successful. We all want to achieve things. But at the end of the day, that's a bullshit metric, right? Money is not, it's a metric, but it's the absolute worst metric in my opinion. Because if you're thinking about money as your goal, then you're thinking about what you're able to extract from a situation rather than the value that you're able to provide to the situation. So we have to have a goal that's bigger than ourselves, just like we did in the military. We weren't out there to go, like, nobody signed up. I can't say nobody. Most of us, 99%, didn't sign up to go get that, GI Bill. We didn't sign up to get free MREs. We signed up because we wanted to serve something in a way that's bigger than ourselves. We wanted to contribute to a larger cause. Oh, yeah. So for me, Spartan Media serves a couple of different purposes. One is it provides a vehicle that allows people to succeed at whatever it is that their genius is at. So by us performing the services that we perform for people, it helps them have a bigger impact on the world. So now they can do bigger things and impact more people in whatever their passion is.
Yeah, they get to become authorities in their field, which is not always easy to do.
No, definitely not. But then beyond that, the other side of it is, I talked about after Todd took his life, I started reaching out to a lot of veterans. In doing that, over the last several years, I've gotten countless messages from people about how I've inspired them, about how I've kind of pulled them back from the edge of suicide, how I've inspired them to go after bigger things, just become better versions of themselves. So that's another huge component of my mission is the more I can achieve and the more successful I can be, then the more fellow veterans that I can inspire to go on and do bigger things. And the more veterans that we can get to absolutely crush it, the stronger, not just the veterans community, but the entire country is going to be, because veterans are uniquely qualified to run a business. Like, they have leadership skills, they have tenacity, they're able to overcome adversity, they're natural problem solvers. So the more veterans that I can help be successful, the more we're going to see greater financial prosperity. We're going to see a stronger economy overall. We're going to see more jobs created. Now more people have opportunities, maybe for the people who aren't meant to be veterans. Now we have more businesses out here that can employ them. So it's just this, the kind of the rising tide lifts all ships thinking.
Yeah.
So those are the two core purposes behind Spartan. I mean, what we do is great, but there's a bigger mission behind it than just making money for Jeremy. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it, brother. I mean, what I'm getting from that is you're helping, in this case, an ambitious vet that's looking to build brand authority in their industry, which, brother, unless you have a lot of capital, sometimes it's not always easy. Or if your content is off, it's not always easy to do. Or if you're not talking to the right people, networking and stuff like that. It sounds like Spartan Media helps them be able to do that, so they can go and create jobs, continue to chase after these big missions, right?
Absolutely.
And stuff like that in the uniform. It's great. It's great. Perfect, man. Yeah. So is there anything else you would add to that?
As far as like a mission?
Yeah. So like, what are some of the services that Spartan Media offers currently?
So up until fairly recently, we had always run as pretty much a full service agency, and to some degree we still are. But what we're really focused on now is that authority building service. So we'll take somebody who is a legitimate expert. Like, we're not going to take someone and fluff them up if they're not. I know you and I have talked about some people who have misrepresented themselves.
Oh yeah.
I have a real problem with that, because they end up hurting people as a result of not being who they say they are, and people kind of waste their time, energy, and resources in aligning with them. So we take people who are legitimate authorities. They're an expert at what they do. They're passionate. They deliver amazing service, all of the above. We take them and establish them as an authority by getting them featured in the media, by crafting how they're perceived online, by helping them get their social media in alignment with who they are and what their mission is. And these are all a lot of things. Look, theoretically, anybody could pick this up and figure out how to do it. It's a lot of work, but it's not impossible. So, I mean, we take two approaches. We're actually in the process of rolling out a course for the people who want to kind of take a DIY approach and do the work themselves. But then we've also got the done for you service, where we do all of it for them. We'll take them out and we'll write articles for them. Like, we'll take their knowledge and we'll write the article in a way that is engaging.
It is comprehensive. Right. Oh, I have that problem. Yeah. I'm just like, holy cow. Some of my writing can be too authoritarian as the tone. I get that feedback all the time. And yeah, absolutely, brother. So it's just being able to speak the tone, the brand archetype. It sounds like to who you're trying to speak to, right?
Right.
It's not always easy.
It's really not. But, where we really become valuable to those people is a friend of mine gave me, a friend and a client actually gave me this description for his business, and I'm kind of co-opting it, but we can collapse time, right? So like, if you were to go out and try to get featured in the media, you would have to go and establish these, because you have to imagine
we would strike
journalists,
out. We would strike
out. The journalists, the producers, the anchors, all the people in the media, they're constantly getting pitched all day long, every day.
Oh yeah.
So you have to be able to first get a compelling story and have your overall image properly presenting you online. Then you have to find the right people. You have to pitch them with a pitch that's compelling and it's timely and it meets what their audience wants. And then you have to be able to tell the story within that conversation. That's a lot of moving pieces to kind of develop on the fly.
It is.
Whereas with us, I already have relationships with these people. I can pick up the phone and get a producer on the phone in 5 seconds. So, it kind of breaks down to, are they wanting to get results fast? Are they wanting to get results a little bit less expensive? So for the DIY or the done for you side.
Right.
But
great.
Yeah. So in that, all of the various components are there. So there's SEO, social media, PR, web development, all of that. So that's pretty much the story there.
You can either ambitious that you can either go sweat equity or you can go pay to play to become more quicker. I mean, that's really the face. I mean, whenever I've paid for services like Jeremy and his teams, it's just expedited the process, the system of being able to do things. Now, the capital is not necessarily always there, but I'm also sure that Jeremy offering that program helps you be able to learn at your own pace as well, just to kind of get plugged in, kind of learn the next 5 steps, and then put you in a position to where you obviously can start accelerating and working more directly with Jeremy and his team, I'm sure, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome, brother. So, man, I know we've been on here. I've been wasting a lot of your time, brother, but you have been spitting some golden grenades, brother. So I feel kind of bad that I'm about to shut this down a little bit, but I want one last golden grenade, man, for an ambitious vet that's been out for a few years, but is just lacking a sense of purpose, satisfaction, and fulfillment in life, right? What would you give that ambitious vet right now to keep them moving forward in the trenches of life?
I'm going to give you 3. So they need to find a mission that is bigger than themselves. They have to treat literally everything like a competition. And you have to stay disciplined. There's a lot of things that we have to do in this journey. And if we're not disciplined, we'll do them when it's convenient. And it's often not convenient, so they don't get done. So you put those 3 things together and you are going to dominate whatever it is that you're doing.
Huge, brother. Thanks for your time. Before we let you go, where can people go find out more about Spartan Media right now?
I am incredibly easy to find. That shouldn't surprise anyone. If you Google Spartan Media or you Google my name, Jeremy Knopf, that's spelled Knauff, I will come up in pretty much any search engine. And people can connect with me pretty much anywhere, social media, website, you name it.
Perfect. Ambitious Vet. And I'll have all these links in the show notes below. So make sure you get in there. Whatever your preferred medium is as far as online communication, make sure to click those links and make that happen, right? I've always said that, the difference between people that are successful and the people that are not in their desired fields is you get information and you've got to execute it immediately, right? Gain the information, start building a relationship that's going to help you become more out of the uniform. I can only be the catalyst. You've got to be the person taking the action, right? So, Jeremy, brother, thanks for your time, brother. It's been an absolute pleasure. Is there any parting words before we say goodbye?
Failure catches the weak when they put today's comfort over tomorrow's goals.
The Ambitious Vet is available on all popular podcast platforms. Go to vettrainingcoaching.com to subscribe, rate, and share with fellow vets.
Again, Ambitious Vet, if you haven't already, go check out 10 Steps to Success book.com, the 10 Steps to Success book.com, to grab a framework, Ambitious Vet, that you can just plug your passion, your goals, your aspirations in to actually become who you truly want to be. The steps are already aligned with a couple bumps and bruises from the life I've lived, but I really think that if you take action with these tools and bonuses that are at this website, Ambitious Vet, and you execute with all out effort, I promise you, your life will look totally different 12 months from now. And I look forward to seeing those results. But they start by going and taking a look at www.10stepstosuccessbook.com. We'll see you on the other side.